Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Flower Power Live. Today is February 22nd, and today I want to share with you some thoughts about preparing for spring. And Flower Power Live is a place where every week share some kind of plant wisdom, whether it be the history, the medicinal use, and some other insights about how we can be better connected with plants in our lives. My name is Allison, and I just love plants. So here I am sharing my love of plants with you. So today we're getting closer to spring. The bluebirds are getting bluer. I always feel just so much better when I start to see a few things happening outside. Of course, it is snowing again here in New Hampshire. We've had, I think, 5 snowstorms in the last 2 weeks, but I know it will soon melt away and spring will be here. And that gives me great hope. However, when today I saw red maple starting to bud up and bloom, and I realized that spring is not the best thing for some people because for example, my son is very allergic to maple pollen and other types of hay fever, other types of spring pollens. And so spring brings not a very fun time for some people. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about how can you prepare yourself if you're in that situation to have a better spring. And I also drew a card. I drew Nettles from the Herb Crafters Tarot deck, and that is quite appropriate because nettles is something that can be very beneficial to help reduce inflammation and help with just allergies in general in our bodies. So today we will talk a little bit about nettles, and I want to start with a quote by herbalist David Hoffman, and it goes like this: "When in doubt, choose nettles." Many herbalists have this as their philosophy. It is one of the most important plants in the herbalist toolkit and one of my favorites as well. And so I remember the first time I ever suggested to a couple friends of mine, oh, well, you should use nettles for that. And they just looked at me like, "Oh, are you kidding me, Allison? That like stinging horrid plant that we is like a weed?" And I was like, yeah, yeah, that's the good stuff right there. So let's talk a little bit about nettles today. We'll be talking about it again this year because it's such a wonderful and diverse plant. But nettles is Urtica dioica, and it grows wild in most of the northern hemisphere, and it gets to be about 4 or 5 feet tall. I saw one thing that said 6 feet tall, but I've never seen it that tall, and a lot of times it's much shorter than that. It has these serrated, bright green leaves that are actually it's just such a beautiful color. I mean, that is herbal green. That is the green of nature right there. And so you can see those serrated leaves, and all along those leaves, on the underside of the leaves and along the stem, you have these very small, fine hairs. And those hairs are what give it the name stinging nettle. So the nettle has kind of funny flowers on it. It's has these like I don't know if you can see that or not. These kind of hanging catkin-like flowers, almost like what we saw in cottonwood, and they bloom every spring. You generally want to harvest before the flowers come out on nettles. That's when it's best, first thing in the spring as a spring green. So it grows in huge patches, and it is quite prolific. And so it's probably not something that most people want to plant in their garden. I personally have a giant patch of it because I harvest a lot of it. I share it with my friends. I dry a whole bunch of it because it's great to have for just about any kind of tea blend. And it has a lot of nutrients. It's one of those spring greens that people would eat to help to kind of like re-cleanse and refortify themselves after a long winter of, more heavier kinds of foods. So the hairs on the leaves, the stinging part, the main thing that causes the sting is formic acid, which is the same thing that's in a when with ants, like the stinging red ants. And so it does pack quite a punch and can be quite painful if you do get stung by the nettles. So, my question to you today is, have you ever been stung by nettles? If you have, I'd love for you to comment down below. Let me know what your experience was like and what did you do about it? The reason why I ask is because there are several plants that grow, other weeds that grow often in the same type of, micro environment as nettles that can be very helpful to get rid of the sting. And some of those plants include jewelweed, yellow dock. Those are the two I mostly focus on. I really like yellow dock. And basically you would just chew it up. I think plantain would probably also work. You chew it up and you make a little poultice and you just kind of rub it on the affected area. And it does help quite a bit. So keep that in mind should you ever run into a patch of nettles in an unfriendly manner. So let's talk a little more about the benefits of nettles. I'm not going to get into everything about it today, but it is a very nourishing herb. So that means it's something that's relatively safe for just about everybody. Anything that I recommend here, of course, if you are pregnant or nursing, you should really think about that. Although nettles is good for nursing. Oh, I can't get into all the things about nettles. There's so much great stuff, but it can be used as a food. Can be sauteed. You can throw it in soups. You can make it into a tea. You can dry it for later use. You can create a tincture out of it. The seeds can be harvested for another specific type of tincture. And I've even seen it harvested. I watched someone harvest it. It was on a video. Strip off all the leaves, the part I want, and then just save the stems and then create that into a type of fiber where they made sort of like a hemp or twine type of a rope out of it. So it is an incredibly versatile plant. And in fact, it's so nutritious, it has more potassium, magnesium, and calcium than some of these super nourishing greens that we usually think of like kale. So it's very good for that sort of thing. Now, the main chemical constituent in nettles that can help with allergies is called quercetin, and you might have heard of this or seen it, on the shelf as a herbal supplement. And quercetin is a natural bioflavonoid, and it's found in a lot of plants, but it's pretty concentrated in nettles. So that's one of the reasons why nettles is used for this. It has antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antiviral properties, but it also has an antihistamine-like action because it has the ability to inhibit the production of histamines. So this decreases the inflammation and swelling from the reactions. And how many times have you heard that inflammation is like the root cause of all of our diseases? So anything you can do to reduce inflammation in general is always beneficial overall to your body. So just a little bit, I'm not an expert on histamines, but histamines are a particular type of component that, a chemical that our bodies make that respond when they sense that their body is under attack by some sort of allergen. And so they come out and they sort of surround the allergen, and they cause a lot of blood to flow to the area. They cause the swelling. And this calls in, believe it or not, cortisol, which comes in and helps to remove the histamines, and the immune system kind of kicks in and tries to attack and get rid of these invaders. So one thing that is really important to note that I thought was interesting is that the nettles has an affinity for the kidneys and adrenals, which is interesting because that's where cortisol is produced. So if you are a person that's having a lot of severe allergy reactions to things, you might look into and just find out, are you heavily stressed? Is your body suffering from adrenal fatigue, which basically means you're stressed all the time, your adrenals are overworking, and they just cannot keep up with the production of cortisol that your body needs. Now that is for another entire episode, so we won't get into the details of that here. But I do just want to say one thing about the quercetin supplements, and that is that many of them come with these different warnings. And so you cannot, you really need to use caution when you're deciding to use some of these things. Same goes for any kind of pharmaceuticals. Anytime you take it out of its sort of original form, you take it away from the source. Um, you want to be careful because now it's more concentrated. So you know what I'm going to say next? Go to the source, go straight to the nettles. And nettle tea is something that can be uh, drank all season long, all year long. I use it in a lot of my tea blends. I harvest a lot of nettles, I dry it, and it's a wonderful tea. It's very mild tasting, can be blended with just about anything. So go to the source. Now, if you are a person that tends to have a fair amount of allergic reactions to things, you can create a like an extract, an herbal extract formula that you can take on a regular basis, starting about now or a few weeks earlier even might have been good, prior to the sort of hay fever season. And this, I learned a great formula when I was doing my herbal studies, and this was has proved quite helpful for my son that I was talking about earlier, who gets these early spring allergy reactions. So now the trick is that this is not a formula that you would take for an acute allergy attack. So if you are having a major allergy attack, you definitely, and you feel you can't breathe or anything like that, you absolutely need to get some sort of antihistamine or some sort of medical help. However, if you want to try to sort of prepare your body by decreasing your inflammation and so that your body is better prepared and hopefully have a decreased amount of reaction to allergens, then you can take a formula that includes nettles and a couple of other great plants. And I usually use goldenrod. I sometimes will use ragweed. That depends on the person. Yes, ragweed, the thing we're all allergic to, you can make a extract of that, and that can help to reduce your sensitivity to it. I also usually add some kind of liver helpers like dandelion root or Oregon grapefruit or even yellow dock, but uh, will depend on you. So everyone's constitution is different. So I recommend if you're interested in trying to, if you're a person that's constantly taking, allergy medicines all spring, check in with your local herbalist and see if you can get a formula that's going to fit your constitution well. Medicinal mushrooms are often another good component because they're just good for the immune system overall. So now you might not be able to do that. So you can always just go back to having a daily cup of nettle tea. It's just nourishing and it is good overall for reducing inflammation. Now, I'm going, again, we'll be talking about nettle a lot more in other shows later this year. I did want to talk a little bit about the flower essence, though, and I found this was interesting. First of all, it has that kind of weird flower that I showed you earlier. It really doesn't look like a flower. It's nothing decorative or beautiful, but the flower essence supports us in leaving behind negative or toxic situations. It also helps us make those clear choices on what to do in those situations and to realize another important thing that these difficult life lessons that we are exposed to, that we come up against every day, those are here to kick our butts, make us trying to rise to the challenge of the person that we're supposed to be, right? They have a purpose. They may be painful, but they have a purpose. So, nettle flower essence can help you to move away from something negative and kind of know the right direction to go when you need to move. So, I did choose this oracle card, and this is again from the Herb Crafter's Tarot. And this is called the Ace of Earth. And the aces in this particular deck signify the beginning of a journey. So all the aces are a type of weed, and that means they're readily available and accessible to everyone. So they're kind of for the beginner. So nettles are considered kind of a beginning herb, where they call it a gateway herb. That we'll call it that. But this talks about the beginning of new projects. So a beginning of a new project can be challenging. It can be difficult, but you need to respond. And you also need to give the attention to that which needs to have, which is begging for your attention, right? You have accesses to all the resources that you need. All these kind of weeds outside your door are accessible to you. You have ways to help you. This is what the message is from the Oracle card. So my insight into this is thinking about nettles. If you've ever been stung by nettles, or if you've ever even been bitten by one of these ants, you know what that feels like. When that happens, suddenly nothing else matters now, does it? Immediately, all your attention is drawn to this intense pain. And so you're going to do whatever it takes to alleviate that sting, right? And I told you about, in the case of nettles, some great ally plants that will help. But so just in life, when we get stung or we get burned, we're like focusing all of our attention on this pain and how painful it is and how terrible it is. But you have to remember that every moment, just like this reaction, just like this sting, it will pass. And that pain right now, we tend to want to focus on it. We want to relive and prolong our pain. You got to let it go. Okay. You got to let it go. And you've got to recognize that when something painful happens in your life, it's usually trying to get your attention and trying to make you pay attention to what you need to do. What do you need to do? It's you have been ignoring something for a while, and now you're going to get some pain out of it. So make sure that you stop and look for the goodness underneath. Think about nettle. Nettle packs a powerful sting, but the rest of it is just incredibly nourishing and good and useful. All kinds of uses for it. So a lot of times that pain leads you to reorient yourself. What direction am I supposed to be going on? And how is this showing up for me in my life? What should I be doing next? So that is our message from Nettles tonight. Thank you so much for joining me here. If you're interested in getting more involved in a community of people that are interested in learning about herbs and medicinal plants and just about being more connected with nature, feel free to join my Facebook Flower Power group, and I will put the link in the comments below. And I will see you next week. And until then, have a wonderful week. I hope that spring is springing up in your neck of the woods, and I will see you then. Have a great week.